We greet this Easter morning in a way that most of us have never done before. Not going to church, not gathering with family and friends. The house filled with aromas of a wonderful dinner and chocolate. It all seems so unnatural to us. Our routines have been upended for almost a month. Some had thought that by Easter we would be back to normal. But listening to reports, we may be approaching the height of the storm. It is so unnatural to see people walking about with medical or homemade masks on their faces, the lessening of traffic at the height of rush hour, and news reports urging us to stay in our homes whether we feel well or not. It does seem that our long Lent is not quite over, and yet here it is, Easter Sunday. It does seem so unnatural. And yet, the feast we celebrate, the crowning of our liturgical year, is one that is unnatural. Mary Magdalene did not approach the tomb seeking the presence of Jesus, but went to pay her respects to one who had died in a most cruel way, rejected, betrayed, crucified, and placed in a borrowed tomb. We know the feeling of saying farewell to a loved one who has died. Memories flood our minds, regretting words unspoken, and knowing that we will not enjoy the person's presence here in this world again. Mary Magdalene probably shared in those same feelings as she approached the tomb. And then the discovery that the tomb was empty, the final insult to Jesus, Mary probably thought. They could not even let him rest in peace. Where would they have taken him? Who would have done such a thing? What other explanation is there? On that first Easter morning, no one would have thought of any other explanation. It just does not seem natural to think of Jesus resurrected. Yet, this is precisely what we celebrate today. In the midst of sickness or fear of it, and even with the mounting death toll from the coronavirus, how are we to think of resurrection? Yet, that is precisely where the Lord puts our thoughts on this Easter day. We have to recall the scene of Calvary. Jesus had been tortured on his way to that place, cruelly nailed to a cross with a lance piercing his side. In that day, crucifixion was made to be such a spectacle so to keep the citizens in line, lest they challenge the mighty rule of the Roman emperor. It was a death reserved for criminals and insurrectionists, those who defied the Roman law. There was no doubt that Jesus had died on that cross. The soldiers did not bother to break his legs. In that scene, all the hopes that his followers had placed in him had been lost. They only had the option to go back to their previous lives. But that Easter morning changed everything. In the description of St. John's Gospel, it was John who followed Peter to the tomb. And here we have the heart of the Easter message. He saw and believed. In the midst of death and hopelessness, John did not see merely an empty tomb, but the fulfillment of the promise that Jesus had made. To John, even though what he was believing in seemed to be the unthinkable, everything began to make sense. He saw and believed. In our present suffering, in the suffering of those who are struggling with the coronavirus, in the pain of those who have lost family members and friends, are the words, "He saw and believed." Our struggles are not in vain. Death itself is vanquished on this Easter day. We may not be following our normal routines for celebrating Easter, but this is the day that gives us true hope that nothing can chain the power of our Savior. Not the heavy stone rolled across the entrance of the tomb, not our own sinfulness, not even death itself. In Jesus' resurrection, we find our life and our hope. Nothing on earth could prevent that day from happening. Nothing on earth can still stop the power of resurrection and new life. As St. Paul said to the Corinthians, "Therefore, let us celebrate the feast not with the old yeast of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth." And so, in a time for us that seems so unnatural, we celebrate that feast which is truly unnatural, that of Jesus rising from the dead. This feast gives meaning to who we are as God's people, the ones who can see the bright promise of immortality past the daily challenges and disappointments that we experience in our lives. This feast can help us to see past the social distancing, sickness, and even death to an empty tomb illumined in the dazzling light of resurrection. On this Easter morn, despite all of its trying circumstances, may we, like John, the beloved disciple, be known as the ones who peer into the tomb and believe. For this is the heart of the Easter message and the hope that is ours in our resurrected Savior.